and I greet you with a greeting of peace and mercy. Salaam alaikum. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this invite. It's a wonderful, wonderful occasion. You fed me so well, though, that I was thinking, oh my God, you know. I'm supposed to be talking about shared values, and I can imagine the shared value we're going to be all engaging is the after food sleep. That Sunday lunch type of feeling. So I hope that you won't be engaging in that particular shared value this evening, or at least not until after I've spoken at least. Now, this conversation about shared values, I want us to be honest about why we're having it. Not necessarily about why ISB and Islamic Society of Britain and Islam Awareness Week are having it, because they've been talking about such things as shared values for a long time. But it's not exactly been a buzzword out there in the mainstream for the past 15, 20 years as it has perhaps been with ISB and IAW. We're having this conversation because we're scared. And I think it's really important to recognise that, to recognise the drivers of why we talk about community cohesion. Why, what's the glue that binds us all together? We're all desperately trying to find that glue because we're scared. We're scared that there is an alien or an enemy within. We're scared that there are people in our midst who are going to blow us up, blow themselves up. We're scared that they don't actually belong. We're scared that they feel that they don't belong. We're scared that the whole structure of our society, which is so diverse, so multicultural, is all going to collapse around us. We're scared of the earthquake in the structure that isn't actually glued together very well. And I think if we actually get over that fear is a powerful, perhaps the most powerful emotion. When Lupin's talking to Harry Potter in one of the books, he says, he says, what are you scared of? And he says, well, do you think the Dark Lord was going to come out? Sorry, I was quoting Harry Potter, but I've got 3 kids. And he said, and it's the glue that binds us together, let's face it. He says that, what am I scared of? You're scared of fear itself. Your fear is fear itself. Very wise, Harry. And very wise indeed, because fear is such a paralysing emotion. But let's get over that. And we can begin to ask ourselves the question. So the question that gets asked in the Muslim community, are you British first or are you Muslim first? It's a really stupid question. It's one of those, it's definitely one of those questions that my son would say that's a very silly question, because it's the type of question I remember got asked by The Guardian. And The Guardian said, can you give us 3 adjectives in order of preference? In order of preference that you identify with. I was thinking, oh God. So I said to my son, and he was 9 at the time, I said, can you give me 3 adjectives in order of preference to describe yourself? And he had a good education, so he knew what an adjective was. It took me at least until I was 25. And he said, well, that's a really stupid question. And I said, yeah, I know it's a stupid question, just answer it. So then finally he thinks about it, he goes, human. I'm like, it's a noun, but he says human, and I thought, God, you have great parents, what, But that's what he thought. First and foremost, what are you? What's your identity? What's your primary driver? I'm a human being. So I said that, and after that, he goes, boy, fair enough. And after that, cheeky. So this business of, are you Muslim first or are you British first? It's a stupid question, because I'm British, and I'm Muslim, and I'm a woman, and I'm a Londoner, and I'm an editor, and I'm a Spurs supporter, and thank you. I'm doing quite well at the moment, actually. I wouldn't have admitted to that publicly a couple of weeks ago. But, we're saved, we're not in relegation, what can I say? We beat Liverpool, my husband's a Liverpool supporter. I have an interfaith marriage, my husband's a Liverpool supporter. The children have all inherited his faith, unfortunately, except my daughter supports Arsenal, and I'm a Spurs supporter, how miserable this is. But we digress. Definitely we digress. But all of this is also a chicken keeper, but we won't go into that. I have these multiple, we may do actually, if I know me. We have these multiple identities. I have these multiple identities, and I have them all simultaneously. And being Muslim first, British first, well, they're not in order of preference. And actually, if you ask Egyptians, according to the Gallup poll, which is a study of, the Gallup worldwide poll of the voices of 1 billion Muslims, and you went to Egyptians and you said, are you Egyptian first or Muslim first? I said, we have to choose. He said, yeah. Well, they said, well, we're Muslim first, but they're Egyptians. If you're forcing someone to choose, then maybe they're going to have to, but it's not mutually exclusive. So this is a stupid question. And but why are we our loyalty. We want to say, you signed up. And then Muslims start, I know young Muslims are going to schools and they're like, well, we're not completely signed up to everything, I said, what are you not signed up to? He said, well, I'm not signed up to foreign policy. I said, do you know what? Neither am I. I wasn't when I was growing up either. When I was when I didn't wear this, right? When I was just a normal white person, as I was back then, until I became Muslim 20 years ago, and when I suddenly became a Paki, but we won't go into that. So when I was a normal white person, and I used to go on marches, and I was kind of politically active as I was growing up, so I did it often. And I'd go on anti-apartheid marches, and we'd go past these things, and I'd be going, Barclays Bank is a fascist bank, Barclays Bank is... I'm sorry, Barclays, you're not really now. You did pull out of South Africa, but at the time there were problems. And it was, Alan's gone, so it was Maggie, 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 out. This was the defining chant of my generation. And I used to go on campaigns and nuclear disarmament marches and things like that, and write sort of not exactly love letters, but separately deary, glowing letters to Neil Kinnock. And when I told him, when I met him finally, I was like, you were my childhood, one of my childhood, pin-ups literally in my room. Why am I admitting to this? Was it truth drugs in the curry? But I was politically aware, and I didn't like my government, and I was anti-apartheid, and my government thought that Nelson Mandela was a terrorist, but nobody said, hey, are you British first, or are you a South African supporter, terrorist, anarchist first? I just belonged, but I didn't actually sign up to everything, and it wasn't a problem. And that's what we've got to say. You don't have to sign up to everything. And one of the greatest allegiances you can do, one of the greatest things you can do is tell a friend that when they're wrong. And that's one of the greatest loyalties, is not to tell somebody you're doing great, pat them on the back. One of the greatest things you can do to a friend is say, you've got something stuck on your teeth. Right? Your skirt's stuck into places where it should... this is what you do to a friend. And so you can turn around and you say to your government, I am loyal, I am a citizen, and I don't like your foreign policy, so that's fine, and I don't like many other things, but you still belong, so let's get that out of the way. So this shared values business, I've been thinking about it, shared values. Now, I got brought up a lot by my grandmother. My mother worked full-time, she owned a model agency. She was a hard-working mum, but she had 5 kids, and I had to spend a lot of time with my grandmother. So I almost grew up a generation sort of older than I am, which is why I have very old taste in clothes, I think would remind me. But I grew up in the cradle of a lady who's now 99, in a world slightly one generation, perhaps almost 1.5 generations older than perhaps I should have. And so I have quite a nostalgic view. I have tea sets. I have afternoon tea at 4 o'clock. I have lace doilies. I can crochet. I have this sort of historic nostalgia for an England that perhaps doesn't exist. I'm not just British, I am English, and I'm very English. And I have these sort of eccentricities. My grandfather was an opera singer. And I have these incredibly eccentric behaviours that are very, very English. They embarrass the heck out of my children. But it's not a world that really exists anymore. My grandmother was born in 1909 in a world that into a country that didn't have electricity. It didn't have electricity in her home. She didn't have tarmac roads. She'd never seen a brown person. The first brown person she ever saw was a military man in the army. He was a Sikh, and the whole street came out to see him pass. It was very monolithic. It was a homogenous, monolithic community. It had its way. I grew up on stories of Zahora talked about getting the history, learning history. I grew up on our history. I've got pictures of my family back from sort of 1700s, and goodness knows what. But it's a world that doesn't exist anymore. So what are we signing up to? What are these modern shared values? How can we, find it together? Well, we did it in the magazine, and we did this glowing, you can pick up copies, but we did this glowing piece of celebrating the best of Britain. We used Islam awareness week as a peg, and in it we had a train drive, and we thought about, what is it in Britain? What are the institutions that hold Britain together? And we thought about, well, there's the people that drive the trains, the people in the National Health Service. We thought of gardens, because I'm a gardener, and that kind of English garden, pilots, British Airways, a major institution, curator.